Accessing library computer data.
The world doesn't always adhere to logic. And sometimes when you're lost, you're found.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our continuing coverage of Star Trek Discovery. Right now we're up to the 9th episode of the second season. It's called Project Daedalus. I believe that's how it's pronounced anyway. March 14th, 2019 is the day that it aired. Written by Michelle Paradise, new showrunner, co-showrunner in Season 3, and directed by Jonathan Frakes. In this episode, when the Discovery crew infiltrates Section 31's headquarters, suspicions arise that the crew may have a traitor in their midst. Burnham tries to help Spock, but her efforts don't go as planned. We're joined by Clay, as always. Clay, how are you? Welcome to Project Daedalus.
Always pull the tube. I said this in Deep Space Nine. If someone's got a tube on their face, pull it out when you're fighting them. It always works. Airiam is a evolved species of a whatever she is, AI half person. She knows to pull the tube.
AI half man.
Yeah. Although I guess technically that was control. I don't know. We'll get into that shit. Anyway, pull the tube. If someone has a tube on their face and you're fighting them, that should be your first move.
That's also, this episode goes a long way for canon that that woman, I think her name is Nan, is a Barzan, which we haven't seen since TNG. But there you go. For all the people speculating about that, she's a Barzan.
I have no idea what that is.
Let's get into an episode called Project Daedalus, which is named after Icarus's father, the inventor, who invented the labyrinth in Greece and then invented the wax wings that he could fly out of his prison with. And it's barely mentioned in this one. We know that we're looking for it. We're trying to find it. So let's take a break. I'm going to play an audio clip. Me and Clay are going to come back and we're going to break down Project Daedalus.
Seriously, what are you doing?
Disrupting your expectations.
I'm trying to help you, Spock.
I do not need your help, Michael.
Our captain says you do. You are the only one who has had contact with the Red Angel. You said you don't understand why it chose you. That's where we need to start. And logic will help.
I understand now. If only I'd taken your pawn, the mystery would be solved.
I refuse to take this posturing seriously. It's entirely out of character.
We've not seen each other in years. You've no foundation for judging my character. Yet here you are, full of self-importance. Once again, taking responsibility for that which is beyond your control.
I don't know what's happened here, Clay, but I feel that this Discovery strung together two semi-decent episodes in a row with each other, and what a revelation for the show to do that. Being kind of snarky here, but I thought that this one was pretty good. I thought this was it carried over a lot of the positives I think that I have to say about last week's episode, if memory serves. It feels like it is and I don't want to say if this is due to the new showrunners or like the writing staff once the shakeup happened and the old executive producers were kicked off, and now we've got this new sort of writing room, whoever's in charge over there, if it's James Duff or Michelle Paradise. But it seems like the tone has changed, and it seems like the way that they tell their stories has slightly been adjusted for the better, I would say.
Well, if this wasn't just painted thick with SJW gay agenda bullshit, I would say no. Of course it was. It was great. I don't. If this woman is the woman who's going to be the showrunner, then I think it's nothing but positive.
Yep.
I thought this was the best episode of the season. I thought it was better than last week's. There's still, I got a few tiny things, but I feel like overall, I thought this was a great episode. I mean, so there's a couple things that I thought was interesting just compared to the first season. Specifically the way they handled Airiam's kind of going back and forth between, her normal version and her Brainiac version. Mm-hmm. And also the way that they ended up killing her off. In that I was thinking about the first season and how what they were doing with Airiam was so much more effective and interesting than the way they handled the Ash Falk thing, and it was kind of the same idea to an extent, even though it was just condensed to one episode. But I thought
you mean in terms of being like a double agent, sort of.
Yes, yeah, and like not totally being aware of what she was doing and all that kind of stuff. And I thought the way they handled that, plus the way they killed her off, was so much more well handled than the way they did the Ash Falk stuff and killing of Culber. because the killing of Culber felt like it was just like a shock killing, whereas killing Airiam felt like I thought it was great. I thought it was a great character death. I thought it was fantastic.
If she's dead, I'm still nervous about the show, and I don't trust the death. I would assume she's dead, although this could all come back with some kind of time travel shenanigans where she comes back. But I thought that the moment in and of itself was well deserved.
Yeah, I'm still not convinced that she's out of the running to be the Red Angel, frankly.
Okay.
But I think, and I have to go back and I'd have to check IMDb, but I'm almost positive the woman who plays her was on the ship last week without the makeup on.
Okay.
As another crew member. So I don't know if maybe if the idea is that she's still going to be on the show, but she's not going to be that character. She's going to be a different background character. I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
go ahead.
I was just going to say the one thing about her death that I didn't love, and I'm not saying it because of the way it played out here, but as far as what it might mean for the future, is modern shows, or maybe all shows, but I feel like it's very explicit in a lot of modern shows where characters die. They have this tendency to really, really, really telegraph who they're going to kill by taking a background character we know nothing about and then having a bunch of information about them given to you in that episode. Like, right. They always get the one episode to shine and then they die. Walking Dead does that shit all the time. I don't know if they do it that much anymore, but the first 2 seasons, it was like anytime a character who hasn't talked for a season gets more than 5 lines, they're dead.
Right.
And the difference, though, is, so basically, I hope it doesn't fall into that trap where it's like, oh, well, now Dittmer is all of a sudden the focus of the episode, so she's going to get sucked out of an airlock later.
Yeah.
The difference is I felt like the stuff that they were doing with Airiam worked really well. I didn't think it was really forced. I was interested to learn about her because we haven't learned anything about her, and she's kind of playing a key role in what's going on. Yeah, I thought it was good. Overall, yeah, I think it's the best episode of the season.
My issue with Airiam, I guess, and it doesn't really have anything to do with this episode as it stands by itself. This is a little bit of like a retroactive criticism. But imagine how good this death could have been if we'd have spent a little bit of time with Airiam leading, True. This is all, and this is nothing but like if the show adapts and it becomes what these episodes have been going forward, this is really just a sort of irrelevant criticism at this point. It's more like kind of a looking in the rearview mirror and kind of wishing that things had been different. But I think that it was such a stark change to get story information about someone here and now. And I think if you wanted to say it's a problem at all, it comes down to whether or not, well, I think that they did this better. And I tweeted about this last night. I think the show is actually just getting better at kind of hiding its narrative issues that it does. Because I thought that this episode was engaging and distracted me from the fact that I probably would have complained about how they did this a little while ago, either earlier this season or last season, where Tilly saying right before Airiam dies, she's like, Airiam, you're my best friend. And, all this, it's like, well, have you guys had a scene together? Like, has any time been spent with you? And I think that that's still a problem, and they should have been doing this from the start. However, this episode was strong enough, and Airiam's sacrifice / death is good enough to, I don't even know if it's a sacrifice because I don't think she doesn't have anything to do with it, but her death at least feels like it's supposed to land somewhere. And that kind of character building is only going to be helpful going forward. But it could have been an amazing episode, in my opinion, if we just had a little bit of Airiam leading up to this, as opposed to just dumping it all right before she dies.
Yeah, I think the counterpoint to that, while still agreeing with you, is that in the first season we would have had Tilly give that speech without having any background about Airiam whatsoever. Like, the fact that we got that bit about her background and even that flashback or the memory thing of them, talking about playing that game and stuff. Yeah. That's at least you're getting some stuff. But I feel like in the first season, they would have done that same scene with Tilly without even having them look at each other for the whole episode. Yeah.
But what I kind of liked about Airiam, and the other thing that's a little bit more of a frustration point, is that she's kind of a cool idea for where tech would be at where the Discovery timeline is supposed to take place. Like, she's a she's not an android. She's just like an augmented human, I guess, who the tech isn't good enough where she can't store all her information like Data can later on. Like she has to sort of wipe her hard drive every week to keep the things that she considers important. And I was watching it just saying, like, what a great character to have around, or like what a great concept for a character where it's dealing with like memories and what you hold important and what things you are willing to let go of. And because of just the brisk pace of we're only going to get to know her and what her issue is in this episode, it feels like it's just another bit of a letdown. Again, this is all kind of crouched in the I wish they'd just done more with this, because I like the concept of the character. I think that her concept works well as where Discovery takes place in the Star Trek timeline. Like the tech for Airiam is right in a way that the Spore Drive doesn't feel right. And I think that it would have been interesting to get to know her a little bit more.
Yeah, between her and Dittmer and the Tube Lady, though, it does kind of make Geordi LaForge look like a piece of shit. But what do you mean by that? Well, because I mean, like, they are so hyper advanced, and Geordi's just got that visor on.
Oh, gotcha. Right. Yeah.
But I guess technically the eyeball replacements do exist, but he just chooses not to get them at the time. Is that his deal? I can't remember.
I think during the series they start mentioning it's possible for him to replace his eyes, and he chooses not to. But the movie one was the one that did like the prosthetic eyeballs. Yeah.
Right. But if I remember correctly, in TNG the show, is that part of the deal that he could get replacement eyes, but he doesn't?
One of the episodes deals with that, and he declines to do it. Yes.
Okay, so maybe it's not that inconsistent technology wise, but yeah, I thought I feel like I don't want to oversell this episode too much, even though it did like leave me in a place where I am very hopeful for the rest of the season and moving forward. But I feel like her death has the potential to be a Tasha Yar type death, where they have been going along to a certain point and things just haven't really been clicking. So they're shaking it up, and this is sort of like the turning point where everything starts to kind of like coalesce a little bit better. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens, but like the feeling of this episode felt like they weren't just killing a character to kill the character. They were actually shaking things up. It fits with the story. Again, if she comes back next week or in 2 weeks or whatever, then who the fuck knows?
Right.
I take back everything I said, but it has the potential to be a turning point episode, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's I think the show is just getting much better at spending or having character scenes with all the characters. I think Airiam does that pretty well. I like the scene where Tilly goes into a room and you get the sort of sense about what Airiam does and the tragedy of Airiam's life, where her just new husband was killed in a shuttle crash that left her deformed or whatever it did to her, that she needs this exoskeleton.
I also like, and again, this would be something that we would appreciate more if we spent more time with the character, that she still like is a shit talker, even though she's a robot. What Tilly comes in and she's like, "I hope you're archiving my things," and she's like, "Your memories are the first ones to go." Like that's not something Data ever would have said.
No, that's the
retained
nice mix.
Some of her humanity.
Yeah, that's the nice mix where she is half robot, half human. And she's allowed to have sort of a sense of humor about things like that, and they sort of joke around.
And as far as potential with her, I agree. I wish they had established from. I would be curious whether or not they thought her out to this point before they decided to do this episode, or
well, it has to at least go back to the Sphere. I think like she's involved in the Sphere storyline where she downloads all the information enough where they had to have at least had her arced out by that point, I would think, unless that's just an amazing coincidence.
I guess I should say before that element of the season. My point is, I wonder if her being an augmented human as opposed to just a robot was always the intent. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like her being a heavily augmented human is a lot more interesting. And I think there could have been a lot of things that we could have learned about her, or ways she could have interacted with people that read more augmented human than this is the robot character.
Right.
So I think it's a shame that they didn't get to do more with her. Again, who knows? Nobody seems to die in this show. So she might be back in two episodes or what.
Yeah. Judging by Twitter, one of the other actors had tweeted sort of like a congratulations and thank you for working with us kind of thing that made it sound more past tensey. I don't know if they're being tricky on Twitter now and
Didn't they do that? I feel like they did that last season too, or somebody recently did that with a character death that wasn't what's his name? Didn't Culber do that?
Culber did it first. Well, I think Culber was the opposite. Culber was like, I'll see you guys next year after he had died. Right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
This seems a little bit different, although maybe they're getting more aware of how to trick people on Twitter to keep things up mysterious. But we won't speculate too much about that. I do think that her storyline works, and it is what the episode continues to do from last episode is that it's balancing storylines much better.
Yeah.
Like stuff feels like it's moving in concert with other storylines, and that time is not standing still for characters while we spend time with like Burnham or we spend time with someone else. And this one, we actually had some scenes that didn't involve Burnham whatsoever, and they actually turned out pretty well, which are like Spock and Stamets have an interesting conversation with each other.
Yeah, although I don't like Stamets this season at all.
Sure. But let me.
Sorry. Yeah,
the one thing that I've been complaining about the episodes and what the Spock and Stamets thing does is that it's a more mature storytelling and writing style where they're telling you about something that you aren't necessarily seeing. So Spock tells them in the audience that Culber and Stamets have broken up or at least moved out and separated away from each other, and you don't have just the ham-fisted scene of watching him move out as they talk to each other. Like there's a sense that the universe is existing while the rest of the show continues on its axis.
Yeah, and that kind of thing doesn't feel stilted because it's building on storylines that we are already a party to.
Right.
Whereas the flip side of that is, Burnham's never going to trust you because she doesn't know that you killed her parents.
Right.
Like that kind of shit where it's like, what? When you're using these dialogue sequences to explain stuff that we have no point of reference for, because that's just the way that it's poorly written to the point where you have to do everything through exposition.
Yeah,
that doesn't work. But if you're having scenes with these characters where they get to relate and react to each other, and they talk about stuff that is building on stuff we have seen previously, then I think that stuff works great. I texted you last night. We didn't get a chance to talk about it though, because I think I was a little bit unprepared for how good this episode was going to be.
Yeah. Do you want to say what your text was?
Yeah. I think it's worth talking about here because I said, is the chess scene with Burnham and Spock really good or is it really bad? Mm-hmm. And I watched it again today, and I feel like it's good.
I think it's good.
Yeah, because I was watching it going like, I feel like this is good, but I also don't know if it's one of those things where if I step back and actually think about what's going on, it's just the same kind of bullshit they always do.
Yeah.
But I thought it was I actually really enjoyed it because it was kind of the stuff that they were talking about, even though they were literally playing chess. It wasn't like a ham-fisted metaphor. It was actually a mechanism.
Mm-hmm. And it comes back later. It ties into Burnham's how she gets around the mines.
It does. Yeah. But I would like to talk about that separately.
Sure.
But it's an actual mechanism for like Burnham trying to work things out with Spock based on a logical game. And it allows Spock to be a total prick about it, which I really enjoyed. And it allowed him to kind of like I liked it because it had Burnham trying to relate to Spock on a Vulcan level, but Spock was responding to her on a human level.
The reason I think this is we could probably actually talk about this for like a half an hour, I think, because I think it's a key scene. I think it's very good, although there's both positives and some problems with it. So on the positive angle, I'll say that Michael Burnham, we were kind of worried about like how they're going to use Spock in this series and like whether or not this is just kind of fan service. Spock seems to be the only way that the show is capable of showing how Michael Burnham Burnham's internal turmoil works. He seems to be the only character that can really put a point on how she's feeling about things. Because it's what you're saying is that the conflict there is they're both half Vulcan, half humans at this point, and they kind of can mirror each other and take the other dominant personality when the other one takes, like when Spock is acting human, Burnham gets to act Vulcan and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's really smart. It really highlights Burnham as a human who is raised Vulcan versus Spock, who is a half human, half Vulcan, who seems to be more Vulcan in that regard. And I think that what's important about it is that it gives you a window into what the show has been trying to say Michael Burnham is, but we've never been able to get the point across. And I think their scenes work really well with each other. I think it's well written. I think that the issue I was having a problem with it is that scene kind of has the fast-paced Discovery dialogue that I kind of have problems with occasionally. Like, unless you're really strongly paying attention to the scene, it feels like they're talking about nothing. But when you go and you break down what they're talking about, I think it is pretty layered and it is pretty incisive to both of the characters.
Yeah, I mean, you should recut that scene of them sitting playing chess with the dialogue from George and Jerry sitting at the diner in the first episode of Seinfeld.
That button is too high.
Yeah. There's 3 levels of chess. Yeah, I thought it was good. I think I am really on the fence with a lot of dialogue when it comes down to just straight up verbalizing what people's standpoints are. Like, I don't love it when 2 characters get into an argument and then one character just says, you know what the problem with you is, and then just verbalizes the internal motivations for the character.
Yeah.
But I kind of felt like it worked pretty well here because
I feel it's necessary to define Burnham. Like, I feel the show has to say what her problem is.
Yeah, because she is, no one else is going to say this stuff about her except someone who is as close to her as Spock is, even though they're not really close anymore, and he goes out of his way to say that. But having him literally be like, you think you're the center of the universe and everything weighs so heavy on you, lighten the fuck up, lady. Right. Was very effective because, yes, that is her entire thing, essentially.
Yeah. And I think
it works coming from him in a way it wouldn't work coming from like Tyler or something, Yes,
or Pike or something like that. I think it's because that feels like a very sibling-y way to talk to each other. Yeah. It's a little bit more blunt and a little bit more direct, I guess. And it's not sort of it would feel a little bit more fake and fraudulent if someone who was in a sort of command relationship or like a Tyler relationship with her, it would feel like they were just trying to get that point across. Mm-hmm. I think Spock identifying Burnham's flaw there, and to me, Burnham comes off worse in that argument than Spock does. Spock is kind of a dick, although, can you explain to me what Spock's problem is? What does Burnham consider to be Spock's issue? I
don't entirely know.
Yeah, this is the kind of my criticism of the scene, I guess, would be the floaty dialogue kind of, at least in terms of what Spock's problem is, it kind of hints that there's a problem, but I'm not sure the show has really nailed down what it is that Burnham has a problem with him, besides the fact that he's not accepting her help or anything like that. But that's her issue as well, and I don't feel that they're arguing about the same thing, so I don't know where it stands. He's really just kind of a dick, although I understand his position because I've seen Burnham more. Like, I understand where he's coming from, where it's like, you can't take all of this on yourself. Like, you need me and you need everyone else here to help you. And that's the only way that we're going to get through this thing.
Yeah, it seemed like the thing that she was trying to help him work through is the weight of whatever the Red Angel thing is supposed to be, like why it chose him and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But outside of that, yeah, I'm not totally sure what the larger problem is. And if that is it is more or less the same thing that, he said to her, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I would think that if it is the Red Angel thing, the problem Spock is having is that his logic can't crack the case of what's going on here. Yeah. So it's causing him to embrace more of like a human approach to stuff like that. And I think it's good. I like the scene, although I don't think it's perfect, because I think that it just really, it takes those two characters, uses a metaphor that might not be perfect, where it's the chess thing, or they're literally playing a game that represents it, and it flips around the perspective that you're used to having from Spock and you're used to having from Burnham, and I think it does a good job of inverting that. Yeah,
I would like to say how much I love fake board games in fiction. Because like if you just had a board, I mean, this is literally what they do in this episode, but I love the fact that if you have two people having an intense conversation, if you had a board in front of them that just had 4 pieces on it, as long as the people in between or during the conversation just in a very passive aggressively or straight up aggressively way move one of those pieces, it comes across as them like playing a game of like mental chess or quote unquote chess. Like you don't have to know the rules of the game that they're playing, but as long as people are moving pieces along a board, you're like, oh man, this is intense.
We had, although we had the opposite reaction from Move Along Home in DS9, where Quark is moving those pieces and the guy's like, the characters are now.
Well, that's different. There was some sort of like virtual reality component built into that, wasn't there? And it wasn't like it wasn't like number 6 and number 2 having a mental battle over a game of mahjong or something.
No, it was just them rolling a ball and like moving pieces and stuff.
I would love to do that. I would love to see a scene that has like 2 characters playing like Go or mahjong or baccarat or something where like there are rules that people know, but they are clearly not playing it correctly.
Right.
But the scene still works just because of the way that they are assertively moving pieces along the board.
That's probably what being a doctor and watching ER feels like, I would assume. Yeah.
I would assume, yes.
Let's see here. We talked about the Burnham Spock thing. Admiral Cornwall returns. I think her name is Cornwall.
I still don't know where she's coming from.
That's
because she was on the ship, the Section 31 ship, a few episodes ago, and now she's just showing up.
Over. Yeah. She shuttled over.
I thought it was very indicative and very funny of my problems with the where the fuck is the ship, where the opening shot of the show is her shuttle exiting warp speed in this beautiful, like, I don't know if you can call it a landscape when it's in space, but
a vista, maybe.
Yeah, vista. This beautiful shot of like the sun just peeking over the edge of the planet or whatever. And then the next shot is her very clearly driving towards Discovery, which very clearly should have been in that first shot, given the position of the ship next to the planet. But it looked nice. But
you know what I found confusing about that? I got the impression from that opening scene that Discovery was adrift or abandoned. Did you I thought we had jumped into the future of the Calypso timeline because it was just kind of floating there.
Yeah, because I'm in the light. It was kind of in shadow and stuff.
Yeah,
and,
so it was in the shadow.
I do also really like it when they carve out the ship using just the lights on the body of it and stuff. I think that stuff is really nice.
Yeah, they do. They do the space shots very well. They always look very good. The new updated look on how space should look, or they what they consider space to look like.
Yeah. But yeah, she was all right. I actually thought she was pretty good in this episode. Again, I don't know where she's coming from.
She feels like a real plot device to me. Yeah. Like she's not so much a character. And I always think back, and when I think about that character, I kind of look back at season 1 and remember when she and Lorca just had sex? And it was like, what was the point of that? Like her character is always this kind of character who shows up and does something sort of weird, or her motivations change episode to episode, and I'm not really sure where she stands, and she exists solely to service plot momentum, it seems to me, and she's not really a character.
I think she exists to be the voice of a Starfleet that people don't entirely trust, essentially. That's about it. Where she
so you think you're not supposed to trust her at all?
Well, no, I don't think you're not supposed to trust her, but I think her actions are supposed to be political enough where it adds a little bit of tension without having to bring in a whole boatload of Starfleet people. I think she's just the mouthpiece for Starfleet, essentially.
Okay, because I think the show is confused then because she has that scene here where she's like, "God damn it, Pike, you're the best captain of all time," and everyone looks at him glowingly, which is a pretty awful scene.
I like that scene. I thought that scene was good. I did. I enjoyed that scene.
How come you liked it? I just thought it was so. When he's like, "Why wasn't I there for the Klingon War?" and she's like, "Because you're the best that we've got, and you can't die," and everyone goes, "Oh, yeah. Christopher Pike," and he goes, "Thank you." I
think the end of it was kind of weird because, like, I liked the setup where he's like, well, Starfleet doesn't use minds. And then she was like, well, we don't not use minds. Like that's the position I think she is supposed to represent. That element of Starfleet where it's like, in desperate times we had to do desperate things, that kind of thing. And then, he got on his high horse because his whole thing is that he missed the war. And,
he's the paragon of virtue, as Sisko says.
Yeah, and then she says, like, well, no, the reason that we kept you out is because if we got destroyed, we wanted our best out there. And I liked that scene in that she had both sides of the Starfleet equation. Maybe they shouldn't be doing this. I feel kind of shitty about Starfleet thing, but on the other side, we hold up what you represent. You are the best. You represent what Starfleet is supposed to be. Okay. The weird part for me is at the end when he's just like, "Oh, I
am pretty great, aren't I?"
Thanks. he's like, "Thanks." It was just, I get what they were going for, but I don't know. It was, I didn't.
It felt
mind
very
it.
on the nose. Like it's just the show does those scenes every once in a while where it feels like it's kind of applauding Star Trek. We mentioned it in the season opener where the Enterprise arrives and they're like, "Enterprise is the greatest ship of all time," and everyone's talking about it like that, and that it felt like that to me. I think the problem with the Admiral is that I would be okay if she was like the stuffy bureaucrat who kind of went along with them every once in a while, but I feel her characterization when she's either fucking Lorca or is like she calls Pike Chris at a point, like when things are in the rough shape, she's like, "Chris, I always trusted you," or whatever the hell she says. I don't need her to be that close to them if that's going to be the case. Like they should have a little bit of separation. And I don't know. At this point, she seems odd because almost every other admiral we've encountered,
is
maybe
a hologram.
They're holograms. Yeah, maybe is that the point. But they also seem fairly secretive, although maybe the hologram thing is shooting that stuff down. So let's talk about Section 31, which encompasses all of that stuff.
Before we jump into that, I will agree with you about the Admiral that she very often just ends up being like the catalyst for the plot. Mm-hmm. Like she literally showed up and explained the plot of the episode here, where it was very much like a side mission type thing where, she's on the side of the road next to her broken down wagon as you're riding by on your horse. And she's like, "Help me. I need you to help me go into town and steal 4 new wheels from my wagon." That kind of thing.
And as you're riding over there, she's talking the whole time, and you're trying to look at your map to figure out where you're going, and she's yammering on about
this
something.
Whole place is covered with Indians. We're going to need an extra set of guns to get through this place.
Section 31, what'd you think about the video game boss level where we have to ascend Dr. Wily's castle to get to the end?
I thought the stuff with the mines was terrible. I really did not like that scene because I don't first of all, it felt of a piece with the other "we need a ship in distress" scene that they've done in all of these episodes. It's always the same thing. Every time they've done it this season, it's been more or less the same thing.
Yeah, something is bumping into the ship. Some space object is bumping into the ship. As
we're flying towards, in this case, a space station instead of an asteroid.
Also, terrible mine technology. How many mines does it take to blow up a ship at this point? You need the mines should be a little bit more damaging, I think, at this point. If you're going to put them all out there, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Also, why do you have to put your shields down? Like, I liked the thing where she's like, "Oh, also, we can't put our shields up because they're attracted to the shields." Yeah. Okay, that's fine. But, like, when you put your shields up, you were totally fine. You could have just driven straight through them and it would have been fine.
Right. That's my point about the damage multiplier of the mines is not impressive enough to just go right through and you'll be fine.
Yeah, it's not like you were avoiding them. Or, fire some photon torpedoes at them and make yourself a hole. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't think, unless you can explain to me how it worked, I don't think the revelation about the game thing really amounted to anything, did it? Because my understanding of it was that the Brainiac was controlling the minds, which was like buying her time so she could download the rest of that shit. Because as soon as she was done, the minds stopped chasing them. So I don't know how that game thing helped them out at all. Because it didn't, those maneuvers they were doing didn't stop them from getting hit by bombs.
No, they didn't. I didn't really think about it. I'm trying to hash it out in my mind now. I was under the impression that Airiam was not controlling the minds, and all she was trying to do was upload her information at that point to Control. So, and if Airiam was controlling them, I think it doesn't make a lot of sense because the characters are shouting out the different maneuvers that they want to do. Well,
I shouldn't say Airiam, but like I assumed that Control working through Airiam was using the minds as a distraction while she could have the opportunity to upload her shit without being caught. I thought.
So would you say that the minds are hitting them because Control is hearing what the maneuvers are that they're doing? Like I would agree with you that if they were dodging the minds, if they were dodging the minds, I could understand it.
There's no point in that scene where what they're doing is effective. And also, even if it is, like the concept that the AI is adapting to their maneuvers based on what? I don't know. And then all they're doing, it's not like they gave Dittmer the stick and she was just manually flying through stuff. They're still going like Omega-6.
Yeah.
You know, they're still calling out pre-existing maneuvers that you would think a Starfleet place like Area 31 would have all that shit on their computer anyway, so they'd be able to see what they were doing. So I don't know exactly what the point of that was supposed to be, except that it was a bunch of different people shouting out random shit.
Yes, I think it's just supposed to be totally random. There's no systematic. There's no system to what they're doing. It's just supposed to be totally random. I agree. I think the scene is confused and confusing. Yeah, maybe, or it's just action for action's sake.
Yeah, I think it's that. I think there's probably something they needed to do the stuff with Airiam, and so I think they needed to have a action scene where they could use that as a cover for whatever she was doing.
I was a little bit. The one thing I thought was kind of odd was that they went through. I don't know what the point of showing the security chief Nan being suspicious of Airiam was for so long, where she does not learn what Airiam's doing the entire time, you know? And during that scene, they kept cutting over to Nan, who's looking at Airiam suspiciously as Airiam is doing the download thing. And you keep expecting, it's like, is she going to go over there and like stop her from what she's doing? Like, why doesn't she ask what's going on?
Sorry, finish.
Do you think that they were doing that just to hint the audience in that what Airiam is doing is suspicious? Because I don't think that's necessary.
I assumed it was to play out the ending, in that the first thing that she does is take out Nan. I assumed it was Nan is suspicious, so we know she's suspicious. I don't know if they come. I think Airiam
she doesn't take out Nan at the end in a way that keeps Burnham in the dark, because they both realize what's going on at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it just was probably a way to make her being the one to jettison her into space make more narrative sense.
Makes more sense.
Yeah, I guess. If she's suspicious of Airiam, she's going to have that disconnect that Burnham doesn't have to be able to make that decision. I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. There's no point where she's like, "Hey, Airiam, what are you doing?" or, clues anybody else into it.
Right. Doesn't have a moment before she goes over where she pulls Burnham aside and is like, "Hey, something's going on here."
Honestly, I think it's probably more for the audience than anything else, because if you took her suspiciousness out of it, it's just Airiam staring at a bunch of squiggly things on a computer.
But the red, I feel the red dots in her eyes are good enough.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't know. I thought it was fun.
I think that it must be for the audience's benefit. They must have been doing it just to make sure that you realize that something suspicious is going on here. Although I think they went overboard.
Excuse me. The other thing I was thinking is it might have been somewhat of a red herring to imply that when they go onto the ship, she was going to actively do something to Airiam, and that was going to cause some sort of Mexican standoff with her and Burnham, but they flip it on you by Airiam just turning around and ripping her face off.
So what do you?
It would be really great if when she was like, "So, do you need those things to breathe?" And she's like, "Yes." If she had been like, "What happens if you remove them?" And she's like, "It would be very painful for you."
Why would you shoot a man before blowing him out of an airlock?
No, brother. One of us must stay behind.
I'm crashing this plane with no survivors.
You merely adopted the AI.
Let's talk about Control.
Yeah.
The AI. It looks like what listener Kyle was saying was correct. Control is the AI that's going to destroy all sentient life in the future, or that is the future Spock sees.
I like to think that listener is a level like below ensign. It's like a rank on the ship. Get me listener Kyle.
What do you think of Control at this point? Or I think that this works. I think that this is coming together with the Red Angel storyline more satisfyingly than I had expected it would. Yeah. Like, I think that things are actually working to get to this point. I feel they have a lot of options with where they would want to go. I'm not crazy about her final line of like, Burnham, this is all about you. I don't really know how that helps anything.
Yeah, it definitely undercuts the thing Spock was saying before. He's like, it's not all about you.
She should just record that and show that to him immediately as soon as she gets back. I think that the admirals have been holograms and everything. Mm-hmm. I think that this works. And the other way that you could look at it is that this is whatever happens with Control and holograms is the reason that the tech goes away, kind of. Like, I'm not super concerned about that at this point, but I could see them tying that into this.
Whatever.
I
don't. If they took the time to tie that thread up, I would not find that satisfactory, because it's like, oh yeah, but it still exists. Like, people could still use it. Just because the Federation doesn't use fucking holograms doesn't mean that somebody couldn't do the exact thing they're doing here.
Right.
Whatever. I hope they don't address that, frankly. I hope they just, that's one of those anachronisms that they just let it lie.
So what do you think of Control outside of that?
I agree with you. I think that it works pretty well. I'm finding this story more interesting than the first season story a lot, because I think the things that they have going on the periphery are arguably more interesting than the actual, like, I'm not just waiting to find out what's in the box.
Yeah.
There's other things going on. Like there's a couple elements, like side elements that they drop in this episode that I thought were pretty interesting, which was Burnham, when Burnham and Spock are talking about the Angel and the signals and everything, Burnham says, well, we have to figure out, is the Angel responsible for the signals, or are the signals responsible for the Angel, or something to that effect? Yes. Because he said, she's shown up a few times that was not concurrent with these signals. And I think that's interesting. And also, the thing that I think is the most interesting sub-story that they still haven't actively verbalized is who and why is Spock being set up? Because I don't know. Is it just the AI thing, or is there something else set in? Is there another subset to that? Because the question that I had about the explanation about that footage of him killing those people is it kind of goes into the problem with a lot of conspiracy theories, like this large conspiracy, like assuming that if the United States didn't actively go to the moon, right? To just say that the moon landing was faked and the footage was faked, as long as you're just considering the small number of people who might have faked the footage, you're like, okay, that kind of makes sense. But when you try to consider the thousands of people who worked on the Apollo program, who would have also had to not ever give the game away and keep that secret, it becomes a lot less easy to swallow. And is the hologram just Control, right? Well,
is that?
Well, hold on a second. My point being, if you have this hologram that is Spock killing these people at the mental institute or whatever, he still was at the mental institute, and he still did break out of there by punching a bunch of people in the neck. So are those people really dead? And if so, who came in and killed them afterwards, and why are they trying to cover it up? Or is this just a detail that they didn't think about that they're never going to address?
Oh, I see. I would think it's a detail they're not going to think about.
Because I feel like it's a pretty big detail.
It is, but because are we on the same page that Control is like Section 31 did not do the hologram, is my understanding. Like it is Control doing all of this stuff to get things in motion. Yeah. So Section 31 is kind of ignorant to what actually happened there. It's not a setup on their part. Right,
but even still,
what happens to the people is the problem at that.
Yeah, he was at a Starfleet run mental institute. Yep. So you should be able to, even if they're getting footage from Control or whoever of him killing these people,
you should be able to still be alive.
Yeah, you should be able to call the mental institute and be like, "Hey, okay, did Spock? Okay, he did break out. Did he kill 3 people? No, he didn't kill anybody. Okay, well that's interesting. We have footage of him killing 3 people. So like there is a disconnect there that should be very easy to verify or not verify.
That's true. We'll have to see. I would imagine the show is not going to resolve that. It feels
I really
like it's
hope
kind
they
of
do.
But that would mean that. Well, to fix that means that Section 31 is actively aware of what Control is doing, right? Because that would fix the problem.
Yeah.
If they kill the guards or something, or they get rid of those guards, then that might be, because the other thing you have to consider is that you wouldn't know, I guess, but they have to sort of fix Section 31 by the time the storyline ends. Like they have to massage them into continuity with the later series.
Do they though? Or I mean, because you've still got 80 something years between then and when they show up for the first time in Deep Space Nine.
I feel this story has to end in such a way that Section 31 is shut down, at least officially. Okay. And then they will make their sort of shadow movements into Deep Space Nine.
Gotcha.
So that would make sense if that was the outcome of it.
Yeah, I mean, it could be something as simple as like, they decide to talk about this next episode, and they're like, oh, somebody blew that place up. I don't know. I don't think it's I think it creates a thread that needs to be tied up as to who did that, but I don't think it's horribly difficult. I don't think they have to spend an episode flying to the place and looking through security logs or some shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as like if they do decide to fix that, because I would call that a plot hole. Yes. I don't like to throw that term around loosey-goosey, but I would definitely call that a plot hole.
Yeah, I'd call it a plot hole. I'd call it it is a plot hole. It's kind of unimportant, but I do feel that they should fill it in. And if they do want to fill it in, I think Section 31 is the way to fill it.
Yeah, I mean, it's unimportant, but it's kind of really important. Because if you've got all of Starfleet looking for fucking Spock because they thought he killed somebody, you would think you'd want to dot those I's and cross those T's before you start hunting this guy down.
Sure.
Unless they're getting all of their information, nobody talks to anybody except going through Control. So the only thing they're I don't know. I mean, it seems like a big deal.
Well, here I guess is the difference between this season and the first season. And the first season, I could see no outcome of how they were going to reconcile this. And this one, I'm like, well, they still have 4 episodes left. I feel they can explain away what's going on here.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, quick fix. Georgiou did it. She was on her own tracking down Spock. There's no reason why she couldn't have fucked off over that place and killed those people or something. I don't know.
That's true. And
I would, even if they don't explain that, even if they're like, oh no, it was Georgiou. That would be enough for me to be like, yeah, sure, whatever.
They're kind of laying the tracks too about having everything in Starfleet get confirmed by Control before they take action on it, which seems a little bit clunky, but at the same time, they're trying to set up the AI as a important thing that is going to go out of control at a certain point. And maybe the problem with Control is that we haven't really had firsthand knowledge with it. They've kind of been hiding the fact for half the season that it is an artificial intelligence program. And hiding it by they mention it, but they don't explain that it's a program that's doing it. They make it sound like it's just the headquarters that they have to touch base with. And I feel that's the one. I don't think the show is going to do it, but the sci-fi version of this, or the more sci-fi-y balanced version of the show, would be very interested in Control as what it is and where it's going. I don't think Discovery is going to be particularly interested in that. I think it's just going to say that Control is a program that goes bad. It wants to do something. It wants to get bigger than what it is, and it becomes a threat to everybody. We have to shut it down. But I feel, much like the Airiam stuff, I feel like it's like a cool sci-fi concept that, even though it's kind of in vogue and maybe overplayed at this point, it is still something that Star Trek could do a little bit of work with. And I don't know how much they're going to do with it. I think they're going to focus more on the personal story and the sort of like epic adventure that they have to go on to fix things.
I think that's fine. Because, I mean, the AI gone amok is not exactly, reinventing the wheel here.
No.
Or is that, I had an argument about, well, not an argument, but a discussion about whether or not I was using that phrase correctly. Like, is it let's not reinvent the wheel?
Yes, let's not reinvent the wheel.
As opposed to it's not reinventing the wheel? Do those both work?
I would prefer let's not reinvent the wheel, because that makes it sound like you're wasting your time doing it.
Yeah. I guess I'll have to find out another phrase. Anyway, so here's a question. This. You want to know? Oh my God! Speaking of AI, my echo
here she comes.
Yeah. Who is the Red Angel? She doesn't know.
It's going to start playing Metallica or something. Playing Red Angel on Spotify.
I heard Queensryche. Do you think they're going to do something stupid by making the AI thing like the Borg?
I hope not.
Yeah.
That feels. If the reveal had happened earlier in the season, I would have been like, they are definitely going to try to tie this into the Borg somehow. Mm-hmm. I feel they're doing their own thing a little bit more at this point. So. I feel they're not quite as hamstrung, and I hope they don't. There doesn't need to, there doesn't need to be that level of interconnectedness in storytelling in these things. Like you're allowed to have different stories go on, and you don't need to connect it all.
I think that would be kind of ham-fisted. Well, I don't know.
The Borg are already so tied into time travel stuff, and
I think there's a little bit of it being kind of satisfying, because it would be like the ultimate AI story, wouldn't it? Because I was thinking about this the other day, about how AI stories are almost always negative, right? Sci-fi stories are always about humans inventing artificial intelligence and then artificial intelligence destroying them ultimately, or trying to, which really, I would like to see a psychological breakdown of that concept, because what does that say about humans' relationship with the concept of God? Because you in that moment are becoming God and creating something, or I guess I should say how psychologically it makes. How does that represent people's feelings about themselves? I guess because you are becoming God in that moment and creating new life, and then that new life turns out to be evil and tries to destroy you. Right. So it's almost kind of nice in a way if this artificial intelligence does become the most destructive artificial intelligence thing in the history of Star Trek. Mm-hmm. Do they need to do that? No. Would it be kind of funky? Yes. I'm still waiting for someone to just smash the cannon open in some form and have the original Star Trek crew have to fight the Borg in some way. I've said this before. If they wanted to do another Kelvin universe movie, fuck it. Just introduce the Borg. Nobody gives a shit. It's not like we have to wait until you get to TNG in the Kelvin universe. Just bring them out. Nobody cares.
They should to modernize it. They should have been like, we originally designed Control to optimize your Amazon.com recommendations. Yeah. And now and there would be this debate about like, well, Jesus, I don't want to just browse Amazon.com without recommended suggestions about what I want to buy. And they'd say, no, it's too dangerous. It's too dangerous.
Well, because I was thinking that there was a possibility that the body of Airiam is like the
seeds,
the seed of the Borg in some sense, but I don't know.
That's what I wouldn't say that's out of realm of possibility. I feel we're speculating now, and I think we're done with the episode.
I do have one more question about the episode that kind of ties into my theory or my question about the video. Mm-hmm. And I would have to go back and watch it again. I meant to do it, but I didn't have enough time to watch the whole thing. When Saru shows that the video of Spock is fake, is the only thing that registers as a hologram Spock himself? Or does the entire thing register as a hologram?
Oh, I don't know.
Because I feel like that is kind of a big deal as well. Because if it's only Spock that registers as a hologram, that means those people are dead and something did kill them.
Right. I don't know. I don't know if it's actually that specific or not. I was focusing on it as they were monitoring Spock's image and then saying he wasn't reacting to what was going on, which makes it a hologram.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Which would imply your thing that it must all be a hologram because it must all be fake. It must all. Maybe there's no guards. Although, what does that mean? Now my head's spinning about what that would actually mean.
If there's no guards, then there'd be nobody on file as being murdered.
Right, and he would have just walked out, I guess. Maybe.
Well, no, Well, no, because in his memory, he very clearly does remember beating the shit out of a bunch of people to get out.
Yeah,
so
that's
those
right,
guards did exist. But if that entire video is fake, then you should be able to call those guards up and then be like, no, I'm alive. He just, gave me the Vulcan neck bench.
Yes. So the other way around this is they find the true footage and someone has stepped into Spock's place in the real footage and is shooting the guards as they're on the ground.
Yeah. But, that's what I'm thinking. It's like, just plug George Howe in there and nobody will ask any questions.
All right, let's take a break. I'm going to play an audio clip. We'll come back and give our final thoughts about Project Daedalus.
But if this works...
It's her or you, Michael.
15 seconds! Please!
Open the airlock, Michael.
1 more minute! Please!
Hey, Airiam, I'm gonna send you your favorite memory, okay? Look at it.
I can't look at it now, Tilly! Michael! You have no other alternative but to eject me!
Burnham, that's an order.
So sorry. It wanted me to kill you. Everything is because of you. Because of me.
Michael, open the airlock.
Please tell everyone I love them. You have to find Project Daedalus. Where's Project?
All right, everybody. So if you're enjoying the show, you can go to patreon.com/the Pensky File if you want to support us. A couple $2 a month, you get extra stuff. It's much appreciated. Keeps this content coming out fairly regularly. And if you're enjoying our Discovery content, it would be much appreciated if you headed over there. So final thoughts, Clay, for Project Daedalus. I thought this is a good episode. I think the show is getting better. I would like to think it's the new writing team that's involved here. The writer of this episode, Michelle Paradise, becomes the showrunner in the next season. My understanding of how that could possibly work in any sort of employment thing is that she did a bang-up job for the second half of this season, and they promoted her based off of that. Kurtzman is listed as an executive producer, but he's more the Berman role. I don't think Kurtzman actually has that much impact on the writer's room. They hired another guy named James Duffy to come in and sort of shore things up for the second half.
Part of me hopes that it was like Arrested Development, where Barry Zuckerkorn is like, you should be the lawyer. Where it's like she did a really good job in this one episode, and they were like, you should run the show.
You should be in charge. I think... we'll see where it goes from here. It's been a couple episodes, and we're kind of losing our minds because the Discovery show has not been that great. Where we got 2 episodes in a row, and we're kind of like, wow, everything is righted, everything is okay at this point.
Yeah.
There's still a lot that could go wrong in terms of plot, but just on a functional storytelling level, I feel like they actually are working with themes. There's having character moments here that make sense. They're talking about stuff that is happening off screen, and we don't need to see it.
It's
Things
engaging.
are moving. It's engaging, right? I don't check my watch while I'm watching this. I'm actually concerned about what's going on.
They killed a character. They killed a character, and I didn't go, what?
Yeah, so you're right. I wouldn't say I felt terrible for Airiam because I barely know her, but I was bordering on feeling bad for that character.
They got me with it. I thought it was really good. They
okay.
Especially that that the last shot of her floating through space, and then the last thing in her memory bank before she shuts down is that video of her and her husband. I thought that was good. That was, and when they bring her back, it's going to be that much more frustrating.
Right. So we'll have to check in on this. I hope they don't bring Airiam back.
Yeah. There's one more thing that it's just a tiny detail that I just don't like, and I think it's just a preference thing. But like, I really didn't like right before she dies going, by the way, Project Daedalus, you have to find it. And then she's, that's really hacky to me to just be like, one last thing before I die.
Here's the cliffhanger.
Here's the seed for the next bit. There was nothing organic about that. There was nothing leading us to that piece of information. The only thing that makes it relevant outside of her being, the only thing that makes it different from her being like, Burnham, you have to find the ceiling fan. The only thing that was different is that Daedalus is obviously Icarus's father, and obviously we're dealing with someone with a wing suit. So there's probably some connection there, clearly. But aside from that, it was like, she could have said literally anything, and I would have been like, what the fuck is she talking about? And it's a very shallow MacGuffining of something that we haven't seen up to this point.
I always want the character, like in that case, she's like Burnham, it's Project Daedalus, and Burnham goes, what? Like, it's pretty noisy. Like, what did she get sucked out of?
That reminds me of that scene in fucking Bohemian Rhapsody when Freddie Mercury is having like the breakup conversation with his awful manager / lover, and they're standing like 50 yards away from each other, and it's pouring rain, and he's not even looking at him, but they're like whispering at each other.
You have to go now, Paul.
But like, if she had said something like, you have to find Calypso, at least that's something where it's like, oh shit, it's something that registers that isn't completely out of left field.
Sure.
But that's just a storytelling thing with me, where it's just like those things I feel like need to be a little bit more connected and not feel completely out of the blue.
Yes. Yep. I'd agree. But that's it. I think the show is actually working as a television show at this point. It says it's kind of stuck in a little bit of a rough spot because it has all this previous material that was not a TV show that it has to draw itself off of. Mm-hmm. But I think that moving forward, it's fine if it continues like this, and just keep working with characters, keep working with everything else, and then we'll see where it ends up at that point.
Yep.
That's it. Guys, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. You can follow all the social media links that would be down below: Facebook, Twitter, Discord, Patreon.com, as I mentioned before, Patreon.com/The Pensky File to support the show. There's PayPal and a Teespring. You can buy the t-shirts and mugs on the Teespring link. And then last of all, if you're on Reddit or something and someone says, what's a good Star Trek podcast, you can recommend this one, or we'd appreciate it if you'd recommend it.
Try not to be racist about it when you say it. I know that's how things work on Reddit.
It is.
That's what I've been told.
And, if someone in some bizarre Twitter thread starts talking about Michelle Paradise saying she's a lesbian who also happens to be an actress or whatever the guy was talking about, you can say that the Pensky Podcast doesn't need to hear about this kind of stuff.
Yeah. We can do a whole side episode just bitching about assholes that just keep spouting that bullshit.
She's a lesbian who happens to be a writer. It's like, well, you're going to rage against social justice and identity politics and then identify the person that you don't want by what they consider themselves to be.
Yeah, exactly. This is the kind of person that will complain about identity politics, getting that person their position, and then bitching about them in an identity politics sort of way.
Yeah.
It's a real it's a chicken and the egg situation, right? What happened? Was she a writer first, or was she a lesbian first? I don't know. Who's to say?
Was she a lesbian before or after she went down on her girlfriend in college? That's what I want to know. Tell me all the details.
All I'm saying is I'm glad this is at the end of the podcast, and you probably shouldn't use this as the preview clip that you put out. Because that will get us both in a lot of trouble, because no one will do the work to actually listen to what we said.
Do the work, people. Thanks very much for listening. This is Project Daedalus. I think I've been pronouncing that correctly. We are done, and the next episode will be the Red Angel, I think, is the next one. Burnham sits in the Iron Throne, it looks like, from the previews. And we'll deal with all that stuff when we get to it. So thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next time.